You want me to put that on my Tudor?
This one's wife. Is this what Harry gets? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I have made many videos involving this one's wife because she provides a huge amount of material that bears analysis with regard to her narcissism and also the dynamic between her and various other individuals, including the intimate partner primary source victim, Prince Harry. It's also because many people are interested in her, and furthermore, I also make these videos because there are still many people that don't actually understand what drives her behaviour, why she does as she does, and how it is that she'll be behaving towards Harry and others. One of the massive advantages of my work is that by understanding narcissism, you can then apply that to the behaviour of other people to understand why they do as they do. Many people, when first involved with a narcissist, be it personally or watching their behaviour from afar, they simply don't realise that that person is a narcissist, and they view that person's behaviour through their own world lens. This is understandable, but it's a mistake, because it results in you failing to understand why that person is behaving in the manner that they do. Indeed, it leads you to being confused and bewildered because their behaviour doesn't make any sense when applied through your worldview, your standards. However, once you start to realise what it is that's driving the behaviour, why the narcissist does as he or she does, whilst you won't necessarily like it, you will then start to understand it. Therefore, many of the behaviours start to make sense, lessening your own confusion and bewilderment. Time and time again I see in below-the-line comments and particular forums where people are discussing the behaviours of this one's wife, they regularly seem to be pulling their hair out and asking, but why does she do this? Can't she see that? Doesn't she understand this? And of course, if they accessed my work and understood narcissism, they would get the answers and no longer would be confused and keep asking those same questions over and again. I also utilise this work to reach people who otherwise might not realise what they're dealing with. And there are individuals that contact me stating, I had no idea I was with a narcissist until I embarked upon the This One's Wife series at HG. It certainly opened my eyes. Furthermore, the point of this work is to enable people to understand what Harry might be dealing with, so that it doesn't become some kind of isolated or detached outcome, but that you start to understand what he is experiencing. And in order to do that, I'm going to utilise another example of a narcissist mistreating their intimate partner primary source to give you a flavour of what Harry might be experiencing. Now, the narcissist in this article, which I've spoken about in a separate video purely about the dynamic between that person and the victim, but here I'm going to use sections of this material to convey to you what it is that Harry could be experiencing in his domestic environment. After all, there are no cameras at Monty Shit Show allowing us to see what's going on. Harry won't speak out about it. Not yet, at least. This one's wife would certainly not speak out about it, and indeed, at the time that it comes for her to speak about what has gone on behind those four walls, at Monty Shit Show, we will be given a revisionist version of what actually occurred. Thus, it's by understanding narcissism that you're able to garner a picture. This isn't idle speculation, because the behaviour that I'm going to describe to you now is typical behaviour of a narcissist, which those of you listening who have been involved with a narcissist in a romantic relationship particularly will recognise full well. This is because when it comes to the narcissist, the same behaviour is exhibited again and again and again and again when it comes to the dynamic between a narcissist and an intimate partner primary source. Thus, that individual is seduced, they get the golden period. They're embedded as the primary source, they get the golden period. They then get the sustained devaluation. That can vary in the range of devaluing behaviours, but the devaluation always occurs. And then there will either be escaped, disengagement, or neither of those things, and the relationship goes on like a roller coaster until one of the parties dies. By understanding narcissism and looking at other examples of it, you will then be able to understand what it is that Harry may well be subjected to. This example that I'm making reference to involves a student nurse and her partner. A girlfriend subjected her partner to a regime of terror during which she bullied, belittled and humiliated him over his weight, hair, sex drive and even his breath. Now, she has utilised personal attributes of that individual. There's probably nothing wrong with his weight. There's probably nothing wrong with his hair, sex drive or his breath. But it is the narcissist picking up on those things and distorting them for the purpose of belittling that individual to gain control. Or it might be, for instance, that he might have been overweight, that maybe his hair was a mess, that there was an issue with his sex drive and perhaps his breath did smell. But rather than showing emotional empathy for somebody that she supposedly loves and cares about, she uses those things as metaphorical sticks to beat him with. It's similar for Harry. This one's wife may well taunt him about his weight if he's getting a bit podgy around the middle, if he's getting some moobs. Naturally, his hair is an easy target. He's thinning. With regard to his sex drive, well, he's probably a little randy little bastard, and therefore that might be used against him. Oh, you always wanted. You want nothing. You just think of me as a sex object. He might be criticised, for instance, with regard to the clothing that he wears. But the point is, he will be subject to these similar belittlements as this man was. Mother of 6 Sarah Rigby forced her NHS project manager, Gareth Jones, to eat salad, wear a hat and swallow toothpaste and mouthwash in the wrongful belief he was fat, bald and had halitosis. It could well be that this one's wife would force Harry to go on a diet. That she's rather picky with what she eats, and she would expect him to do the same. He fancies a delicious Ruby Murray curry, but she decides you can't have a dirty curry, you've got to eat this instead. Control through food is something that narcissists will do. During their abusive 6-month relationship, the student nurse taunted Jones over his sexual performance and threatened, if I'm not pregnant this month, I'm going to find someone else to have sex with. Undoubtedly, this one's wife will have used her sexuality against Harry. She will have suggested that he's not satisfying her, that he's not getting her off, and she will have threatened to look elsewhere. That's a cheap shot and an easy one, and one that's regularly used by narcissists by triangulating the victim with persons imagined. There isn't actually anybody on the side, but of course the sense of entitlement of the narcissist is such that they believe that they could go and get anybody they wanted. Now, the behaviour of this Rigby lady towards her partner resulted in her having a conviction for coercive behaviour. She admitted to it, not because she actually truly believed that she'd done what she'd done, but she'll have done that to avoid a jail sentence. She'll have done it pursuant to legal advice, therefore self-serving. She actually showed no remorse commensurate with the fact that she's a narcissist, and she received a sentence of 20 months in jail, which had been suspended for 2 years, and she was banned from contacting the victim or his parents for 5 years under a restraining order. The victim would be frisked by Rigby before leaving the house. He had to go around the streets and do his job from the local library, pub or supermarket cafe until she came home. He basically moved into her house. He foolishly, though understandably, driven by his own emotional thinking, gave up his own property, moved in with her, but he was only allowed to be in the house when she was there. Thus, when she went out, he had to leave the property and she would kick him out. Now, this one's wife might behave similarly with Harry in terms of not necessarily kicking him out of the house, because there's so much room, he could easily go and find himself somewhere else and away from her, but insisting on him being around her. Notice how they had the 2 seats side by side in the study area. Why not have their own study to get on with their work? It's because she wants to keep an eye on him. And it's similar in this instance. Rigby wanted to check up on what her partner was doing so she could keep an eye on him when he was in the house, but when she wasn't there, she didn't want him on his own and would inconvenience him by sending him out elsewhere. Furthermore, He would have to work into the night because she would make him do various errands and jobs for her during the day, showing a sense of entitlement. Similarly, one can imagine that Harry is made to run around after this one's wife. She, of course, is grandiose and sees herself as the important one in the relationship, and Harry is reduced to the status of being a servant to her. Under the regime of Rigby's narcissism, her victim had to forfeit his £4,000 a month wage and allowed her to check his mobile phone on demand. This one's wife, of course, has already commandeered the financial assets of Harry by having them combined with her own, and he was far wealthier than her, and, of course, continues then to utilise their reputation for the purposes of grifting. It would not be a surprise that she would snoop on his mobile phone. She'll do so, offering some kind of excuse, and then, of course, berating him if he were to refuse. Rigby had physically abused her victim. She'd hit him with a glass candle holder at one stage, clawed at him, punched him, kicked him. There has been suggestions that Harry has been a victim of physical violence from this one's wife. Rigby is a more aggressive narcissist than this one's wife. They come from different sub-schools. Nevertheless, the fact is that this one's wife could also be moved to physical violence if the heated fury is strong enough, and would do so behind closed doors. There has been speculation in the past about Harry appearing with a black eye and scratches to his face. There's no evidence that actually confirmed that that's gone on, but it is not beyond the realms of possibility that physical violence could be utilised against him. In other instances, Mr. Jones, who moved in with Rigby after meeting on Plenty of Fish, don't use online dating, was thrown out of her house whilst dressed only in his underwear. During one tirade, she told him, "I may not control social services, but I can control you, and I'm loving it." She called him fat, lazy, sweaty, a whale, dopey, thick, smelly, a dog, during other temper tantrums. Now, there's no doubting that this one's wife will regularly insult Harry. She'll call him names. She will belittle him, she'll invalidate him, and she'll hurl insults at him when they argue. She will repeatedly belittle him, which will then have the impact of making Harry more compliant, making him feel nervous. He'll feel degraded and worthless, a description that the victim has used in relation to himself as a consequence of the abuse that he suffered from Rigby. That victim explained that she used to say things like, "I had halitosis and forced me to drink half a bottle of Listerine or eat toothpaste. I started to believe that I had things wrong with me. I was forced to wear a hat every time we went out together because she didn't want to be seen with someone who was receding, and kept on that she wanted me to have a hair transplant. I also felt degraded, as Sarah used to try and intimidate me and ridicule my manhood regularly. I had regular bruising on my body from when Sarah used to kick, bite, scratch or claw me. I was nervous to consult my GP for fear she would find out and beat me further. As Sarah would not allow me to eat, I was called a fat, smelly slob. I became paranoid about food. If she kicked me out, I was able to stay with my parents. I would be afraid to eat with them in case she summons me back and would be able to smell food on my breath. Whilst I was with Sarah, my relationship with friends and family became strained. I was isolated from everyone." Now, with Harry, she will ridicule him, that she will cause him to believe that there's something wrong with him. That is standard operating procedure for a narcissist, to make the victim believe that they are the problem. With this man, notice how he was isolated, that he became isolated from friends and family. The relationships were strained. This is precisely what has happened with Harry, and it is, of course, all done to make it easier for the narcissist to control the intimate partner primary source. Mr. Jones, the victim, goes on to explain about how he was nervous about talking to his parents because his partner was always listening in, that he was repeatedly being watched. His phone was checked on a regular basis. She wanted his passcode so that she could get into his phone, and passwords to email accounts. It'll be the same for Harry. This one's wife, as we know, driven by her paranoia, is intrusive and nosy. She'll want to know what Harry's doing. She'll want to know what his messages are, what his emails are, and she'll demand access. blackmailing him emotionally to providing it to her. The fact is that also, in this situation between Rigby and Jones, Jones was worn down with repeated messages until he apologised. And on one occasion, she accused Mr. Jones of breaking her ribs, but despite x-rays showing no breaks, she demanded compensation from him and threatened to call the police if he did not pay her. There's no doubt that this one's wife will use threat against Harry. That's a common usage by a mid-range narcissist, which is, of course, what this one's wife is. There was also false accusations that she would suggest that he had been violent, coercive, controlling and manipulative towards her. Again, standard operating procedure for the narcissist to project in that way. Rigby accusing Jones of that. And similarly, at some juncture, this one's wife will accuse Harry of being violent, coercive, controlling and manipulative towards her, projecting her own behaviours. This will, of course, come out post-escape or disengagement when the divorce is on foot. The way that Mr. Jones has been treated, he was accused of being a nightmare to live with. She said he had poor habits and didn't let him use the toilet in the house, insisting he went to the toilet at the library or the pub. Well, I don't suspect that Harry would have that problem, given the number of flushing toilets that exist at Monty Shit Show. But this one's wife will insist that Harry does certain things in a certain way. For instance, in the kitchen, she probably says that he's not allowed to make food in a particular way, that he's got to put food away in a particular way. It's all part of that control. She can't help herself because it's intrinsic in the way that she is, that she has to assert control over him. Thus, whilst they're different sub-schools, the necessity of assertion of control over the intimate partner primary source remains the same, and some of the behaviours are similar. The way that Rigby has treated Jones, you can see that some of these behaviours may well be applied to this one's wife's treatment of Harry as part of his own sustained devaluation behind closed doors. And it is useful to use these examples, real-life examples of other narcissists in action, to help you understand what Harry is likely to be subjected to and how this one's wife behaves. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.